All right, it is 6 o'clock. We're going to call the policy committee meeting of the BUUSD to order. Do we have any additions or changes to the agenda, Michael?
Push 5-8 all the way up to the beginning.
Any objections to that under new business?
John's just jumping.
Oh yeah, John's joining us. And the reason for that is because Jody Emerson is here from CVCC with us, so we could put that first so that she doesn't have to stay for the whole meeting. Everybody fine with that? We don't need a motion, right? We decided we don't do motions for committees. I have forgotten if we.
We actually usually do.
Do okay. Michael is going to make a
to
motion.
second.
Tom's going to second. Any discussion? John, we're just talking about moving 5.8 up in the new business order. So Jody Emerson, who's here with us for that item, could not have to stay for the whole meeting to wait to address that item. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we will do that. Any other additions or changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 3, public comment. Do we have anyone here for public comment? No. Okay. Item 4 is approval of the minutes. The meeting minutes of June 21st, 2023 are in your packet. We have a motion to accept the minutes. All right, Michael with the first.
I'll second it.
John with a second. Any discussion about those minutes? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. And opposed?
I'm abstaining because I wasn't here, although I understand I probably could vote on the issue, but I
Okay,
wasn't here.
all right, Tom is abstaining. Okay, we are gonna go to our new 5.1, which is electronic surveillance F26. So what you have in your packet is a copy of our the last item in the packet, which is our current F26 policy, electronic surveillance. And Jody Emerson is joining us, the superintendent of the Career Center, to talk about how this policy is maybe not working for them currently, and wants to share some thoughts on that.
Sure. So when we separated as a new district, we lost access to the cameras, which are throughout the building, Spalding and CBCC. And there was some work done earlier on this policy, I think last year, to allow us to live view the regions that are only our kids, which makes sense to us for the most part. I think there are ways that was a really good move in supporting safety across the whole building. We can support what we hear on the radio. If we know that there's somebody that we should pay attention to, we can support. We're on the same radio channel, and vice versa. The issue for us, and it's fine to have the limited live viewing, but whenever there's something reported to us that we need to go look at a camera, we have to contact Luke, find a time when he's available in his office to take time out of his busy schedule, go down and view it with him. And then if we need that footage, he has to clip it and send it to us for our use.
Mm-hmm.
Usually we direct people to go spend time with Luke if they need to see it. So that takes time from both of our schedules that could be used for other purposes if we had access to the very cameras that we have access to live viewing, just to review footage in case something happens.
I just wanted clarification. I'm sorry if you've answered the question. So are you referring to video recordings or live?
The
Or both?
recordings. We
Recording.
have live
Okay.
some of the cameras the ones that our students are in, and we understand the concern around, even though we share the cafeteria, that we don't have video footage of that because a lot of those students are not ours. So for the most part, what we see is the cameras that have only our students most of the time. As long as we could view the video recordings in those,
Yeah.
as soon as we got a report, that would be super helpful.
I'm looking at the policy and I'm looking at video recordings on page 1, right? Video recordings. Then on the second page, it says, the last sentence, law enforcement personnel, and parents and guardians and CVCC administrators may be permitted to view video recordings on a case-by-case basis consistent with the requirements of state and federal law. Is that the provision that you're concerned about?
Right now, that means we have to go invade Luke's space and ask his
And-
time to
and
review the footage.
That's what that means?
Yes.
Does it say that elsewhere in this policy, or is it, it's just that with that, that's
I
what that?
think that's
means.
the only piece.
Okay, but I mean, is that's what it means?
So that's
Those
sort of the
words?
sentence we're talking about
Yeah.
in terms
Yes.
of the policy.
We're
that
all in
is-
agreement that we want to see what happens, what Jimmy just described.
Right, I'm just curious about whether that's the crux of the problem, that sentence,
Yes,
and
it is.
whether
Yes.
that,
Yep.
okay,
Michael, you have a question?
Yeah, it seems really silly that we have to go through all that. It just, but I mean, I guess it's because they're two separate entities, but I mean, no, I'm just saying it's silly.
well,
That's all. It
your
really is.
commentary.
It's just
Silliness.
silly. So
is
however you
Ms.
want to
Emerson
change
a
it, I would.
CVCC administrator?
Yep, she's the
So that's-
superintendent, yep, of the
okay.
CVCC.
So
So-
she does have permission, but she has to go through a hoop. to actually
So I
do
guess,
Number of-
right, and so the
That's what
question
I'm
I'm
saying.
wondering about is, do you have a recommendation for an edit? Or if you and Luke have talked about this already, what's the recommendation for an edit there? Because ultimately what we would need to do is run this by legal if we think it's a substantive change, and then by the board to change it for first and second reading. So is there a recommendation of change language?
I think it would take CVCC administrators out of that one and add a sentence, probably right after the first one and before that sentence that it's in, that states CVCC administration may view recordings on the select video cameras that CVCC has access to, live viewings.
So that last sentence under live video, Central Vermont Career Center administrators and office staff may view live video of CVCC supervised areas.
Yes.
So I think we essentially changed that to, I would remove the office staff, so CVCC administrators may view recorded video or have access to recorded video.
Yeah.
So would it be adding in, so keeping the sentence there that they may view live video, comma, and also have access to recorded video? Or does that not quite get?
I don't think it gets to it. I think you need it in the video recordings.
Right, so I think the structure of that sentence under live video
Yep.
is just cut and pasted under the recorded video piece. I have already run this by legal when we first split. And they said, yep, that's fine. We just need to make sure that it's fine to do that. We just need to make sure it's spelled out clear, within the policy. So they don't have a problem with the intent of it.
Mhm.
It's just making sure the language is clear.
Okay.
Okay, so possibly out of that last sentence in the video recordings section, we would take out the CVCC administrators
May
of
be
that.
permitted, yes,
Right,
correct,
and then
yep.
add a sentence that said CVCC administrators may view recorded video of CVCC supervised areas.
Yes.
So same exact sentence, just to end that next section as well. Is that right?
Yep.
John has a question.
John, go ahead.
I thought I recall we had a pretty lengthy discussion about this at one point. And the question I would have is for the Career Center to access these recorded videos, are they separated out? Because the concern was not wanting to have access, if I remember correctly, access people going in and when they're getting access to the recorded materials, would also have the access to the regular high school recordings. So I thought that was an issue. We have to ensure there's some separation. Like if they have access to this recording, how does that work? You know, are they going into a computer where they could actually click on, you know, the cafeteria, or they could look on the gymnasium, or, you know, how are those segregated?
Right. So the company, our vendor that kind of services these, is able to set up access. So like right now, CVCC only has live viewing access to those specific cameras. They can also set that up so that they only have access to those recordings for those same cameras.
Okay. So I remember there was some question when we first did this. There were some issues there were some concerns. I think that's why it was written the way it was.
Yep.
Michael?
Which may sound kind of silly as well, but like, I guess I don't understand why you wouldn't be able to access all the video, being that you're technically, I get that you're not part of us, but you kind of are, but not, I guess. Is it just because
It comes down to FERPA.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they're
So
different school
they're a
districts,
different
essentially.
entity.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
There might be an
Yeah.
example of where working with Luke, they'd collaborate. If there was an example where Jody had, oh my God, something happened in the hallway like that we don't have access to, you know, you can work together.
Yeah, we can still collaborate on
You can still
those.
collaborate. This is more for those situations where collaboration just isn't necessary.
Okay. And you can't delete it, so doesn't, right? I mean, based on, it's not possible
We
to
don't have
delete it.
control of the system itself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what. I think it's fine.
So with it, having been run by legal before and this not seeming like a substantive change, is this something that this committee feels comfortable that we could make those changes and then send it to the board for a first and second read?
Tina can make those edits,
Okay.
and we can just confirm with Luke and Jody, make sure it all is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Does somebody want to make a motion that we will do that?
I make a motion to, you want me to like specify what I'm
Sure,
doing?
yes, yeah.
To remove currently what's in there and CVCC administrators. And put it up in the first sentence where it says video recordings may only be viewed by school admin, although then we're talking about where they're supposed to be. Right, so, okay, so then just add what do you got? You got it?
This is what my edit says. In the section, that is viewing of live video, the last sentence, we will cross out "and office staff" of viewing the live video of the CVC supervised areas. That's one edit.
Okay.
The second edit is adding a sentence.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We're talking about video recording.
Words, that sentence stays the same under live.
Under live, it
Right.
stays the same
That
for
stays,
office
that
staff.
stays the same. Yes,
Okay.
we want them to be able to watch live video.
Okay,
That sentence, if we had electronically, we would cut that sentence, we would copy that
yes,
sentence
yes.
and paste it in without the office staff.
To the end of
Added
the
in
video
there.
recordings.
The end of
section.
video recordings, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so Central Vermont Career Center administrators may view recorded, right,
Yes, video.
video of CVC supervised areas. So, and then we're dumping in the video recordings and CVC administrators. So it
In
would
that
read,
sentence.
law enforcement personnel, parents and guardians may be permitted. And then it says Central Vermont, okay, I think I got it
And then
now.
it will be that. Okay, go
So
for
my
it.
motion is, under viewing of live video, we strike Central Vermont Career Center, CVCC administrators, and office, no, wait a minute.
Nope, we're
You
Nope,
can be that
I'm sorry.
detailed in the motion.
Whoops, I made a mistake. Andrea, I apologize. Ignore what I just said. So
Okay,
Let me
just so you know, Normally, we don't make our motions include all of our verbiage changes because that can get really complex in a lot of policies where you're making a lot of changes and moving things and typos. So generally, the committee agrees to the changes they want, and then you make a motion to amend it as discussed.
I
Right.
was making the motion so that you could record it. And do you already have it?
We'll send it to Tina. It's fine.
Right. I'm
Okay.
not the one who makes the changes. Tina does.
Okay. So
And-
I'll just motion
Yeah.
to do what we just.
Go for it.
Second.
Done.
All right. Michael's making the motion to accept the edits that the committee is recommending. Tom is seconding. Any discussion? John, I think you're talking, but you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I had a question. You mentioned not substantive change. What's the difference between substantive and not substantive? Because this seems to me, on its face, you know, it is kind of a big change as far as policy goes, the viewing. So I don't. What's the? You made a comment of not a substantive change, not doesn't have to go to legal.
We got kind of legal. We got this kind of vetted through legal already, so it's not like we have to bring this back to our legal counsel. We feel that these recommended edits are ready to go.
No, it just the word was used, not substantive change, and versus so.
Okay, that might have been my error. I think the issue is more that legal has looked at this already. So
Right, so
my
it's-
mistake.
yes, I
in the-
think you know it is. I would consider this some more of a substantial change because this is a change of the way we're doing things. That's all.
Okay, okay.
No, I seconded the motion and I still do, but I just following up to John's question. Will we get to see it at a meeting to see the language that we've just agreed to?
If you wanted to
change, I
come
mean,
back
just
to,
to see it?
if you wanted to come back to committee before the board, we could have this on October's agenda and then it would go to the board in November.
I don't want to get in the way of, you know, there may be a need to do this between now and our bureaucracy, you know,
Right,
completing the
Right.
task.
yeah. If
So-
we want to see it first before it goes to the board, we would wait till
Take another meeting.
October. Yep,
Yeah.
that's our next time is in October, Michael.
I think, can we see the draft? And if anybody has any problems with it, then reach out to Chris. And then we can put it on October. Otherwise it goes directly to the board. Is that
For
sound
the
okay?
first October meeting. would
Can you
probably
see
make
the
sense.
edits via email, you mean, before
Yeah,
the
and-
October?
Well, what I'm
Meeting?
saying though is that we're accepting it and
Mhm.
sending it to the board. But if, let's say the edit comes out tomorrow and Tom looks at it and says, oh, actually, you know, I don't like this, he could just email you and then we stop it and put it into the October meeting. Because that's not gonna be warned for the school board until, it won't be this coming meeting, it would be the next one after that, so there's plenty of time. Just give, 3 days afterwards and then it goes on to the board if there's nothing.
Chris, I think Anna's trying to join the meeting.
Sure,
Anna?
absolutely.
Jody?
I think in October it's going for a first reading. The board could send it back to you as well. Just a suggestion.
That's true, if they wanted to. I think,
It
it's
wasn't
really,
clear.
I think it's really important to remember that Luke and I, along with Jody, are recommending this change. I think we feel like it's been legally vetted. Once we get the language done, we can share it, the policy
And it
committee.
wouldn't go into
And-
effect until it had a second reading at least.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Um,
and
But this change can be made certainly before the weekend.
and more than half the people here are going to be at that board meeting. Right.
Correct.
So.
Yeah, Andrea?
So I just wanted clarification, just I guess for my benefit. Under the video recordings, you have law enforcement personnel and parents and guardians, and it said and CVCC administrators. You're not taking that out, are you? Because don't you need that for when CVCC, it should be SD, CVCC SD administrators need to meet with Luke for things that happened in the general hallways and stuff?
Yeah.
So that would stay in, and then you have the new sentence you're adding at the bottom.
Yes.
And then just
My bad.
an FYI, in the past, if there was a policy like this that, say, Luke knows the changes that he wants to make to it, he would put the draft changes. He would already have them made as a draft, and it would have been in your packet already changed, so that you could have seen it in the form that they wanted it to move ahead to the board.
Okay.
There's Hannah's trying to join now.
She did.
You got her in. Okay.
And did Michael's motion also say and send it to the board for a first reading, or have you decided what you're doing on that yet?
That's.
I
what
think that was the
said.
motion, yes. So this was
Yeah.
the discussion, and now we're gonna vote. All in favor of the policy going to the board with these edits for a first reading?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we will send it to the board for first read with these edits.
Judy, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so, now going to, back to the original order. Next is the BUUSD policy index review, and you'll see in your packets, the updated policy manual index with, policy information, procedure, information. This is updated according to, procedural things that are coming online and being made available, and also VSBA edits and changes they're making to policies so that we're keeping up with all of that.
And for review, this is a live document that Tina updates with us. And this is just a kind of printout of where we're at as of September 15th.
Mm-hmm. Any comments or questions on that? All right, 5.2 is the VSBA policy notes. So basically in making the agenda for the meeting today, in making the agenda for this month, Tina highlighted for me, and we had been getting updates from the VSBA and their updates, their weekly updates, all the policy changes that have come up. And since the summer, lots of work has happened, lots of formatting work, definition work. So we had a very long list. So in making tonight's agenda, I just basically went through and picked a bunch to start with, especially ones that we had not looked at since the merger for the district in 2019. So I didn't choose any that like this current board or committee had already looked at, like in 2022 or something like that. So it's sort of random how we started tackling the list, but we had to start somewhere and we needed agenda items. So I just grabbed a bunch of them that looked like we could tackle them tonight. So this is showing the policies that are on the agenda tonight and the changes that VSBA has put out to people to let them know what type of changes are being made. So we will move on to 5.3, which is A1, board member conflict of interest. And you will see in your packet our current A1 with the edits and strike throughs that are consistent with the VSBA changes. And then you will also see the VSBA version of the policy with those edits. Michael.
Under administrative responsibilities.
Yep.
Number 2.
Yep.
Board member shall not give impression that they has.
Yeah, have. I have that in red myself.
Okay.
Yes, so that should be have instead of has to go along with the verbiage. Yep, Tom.
Couple of questions.
Yeah.
The first one, going backwards, a board member shall not engage in or give the impression. My concern with that, eliminating engage in, and maybe even the or, but engage in, I can see where that would be enforceable. You can't engage in for personal gain, you know, what it says there for personal gain. but giving the impression, I'm not sure how that's a workable, because that's in the eye of the beholder.
Mm.
And I don't know, and I know that's the language, apparently the language we've been given. I'm
From
just
them, yes,
just
and their
saying
legal counsel,
that
right?
If, I don't know about John, but if you were trying to defend the board member who gave an impression, I mean, I think that would be problematic.
Mm. mean,
And
I am
too
not-
large.
Right, I am not the VSBA nor their legal counsel, so I can't speak to why are they recommending striking through, because you see it's in every single item.
It is.
Striking through the
Right.
engage in or
But
get
if I
the
can push back on
impression.
that, just because they say that's what, I mean, we're here, we're not just a rubber stamp. So, you know, I mean, I don't know if anybody else has a concern, but I do
Hmm.
with that change.
I didn't until you said something.
What's that?
I didn't until you said something, because I mean, that makes valid point, right? Like, you know, that's a very valid point. Impression to, you know, because anybody can give the impression and not mean to give the impression. I mean,
it comes down to the direction of the board to adhere to these recommended policies, which is what they're asking, but what they have asked, but I mean, we can bring it back to them for questions,
or
Back to the
maybe-
board or back to the VSBA?
back to the board. This is something, you know, I mean, I don't know what the VSBA is gonna tell us. These are recommended.
Can we ask them what their definition of impression is? I mean, I mean, it might have a legal definition that's different than we would normally use it for. I guess we got two lawyers. I suppose we could ask.
John?
Well, I say, you know, give the impression, right? It depends how you read it, because I know what they're worried about. There's someone worried about giving the impression like, hey, I'm on the board now, so, you know, I'll do this for you. You know, it's like not necessarily engaging, but kind of giving, like, kind of letting out the hints. There's some of that stuff going on, you know, outside, you know, bigger than us right now. That's coming on. You know, you're hearing about, you know, did they really solicit it? No, but did they basically give the impression based upon his position that, you know, wink, wink, nod, nod? I think that's what they're trying to get at with that. It is a gray area. It's very subjective versus, and is open for interpretation. But I understand why they're doing that. I don't understand why they got rid of the engage in a lot of the. I mean, it's a very strange strikeouts, I thought.
Would it make sense instead, based on this argument, to, if anything, strike out, give the impression, and keep not engage in?
That's what I would say. That's
So-
what I agree with.
Let me,
Don't do it.
oops, sorry.
Go ahead.
May I throw a hypothetical out to the two lawyers? West Patterson's closed, right? And so the impression, like, I fully support opening up West Patterson for one-way traffic. And I actually spoke to someone today and I said, yeah, no, I fully support it. I know that there's probably two other counselors that probably support it. And I mean, I got my full strength on that, because I gave that impression, right? That, because I support it. I mean, and it's my position as a city councilor that I support that. Does that make any sense as I'm talking that through? Is anybody following what I'm throwing out there?
I mean, I think
You're thinking we're reading into it too much?
no, I don't think we're reading into it too much. I mean, I think we all know that no differences between what we think engage in or give the impression of means. Like, we understand that. It's really a question of just which way we want to go with it. And you know, these changes are recommended. It's a required policy. I know that, you know, obviously the VSBA uses their legal counsel to vet these things, so we can send it to the board and let the board decide if there are any other issues, or if there are not any other issues with the other edits. Then I can certainly represent the question that we had about that phrasing in those items, sorry.
And by board, you mean the school board?
Correct.
Okay, so send it with our concern. I see. Yeah. Okay, I also had, I don't know what's changed since 2019. There's a reference in the notes to, the VSBA model policy manual now includes, updates. I'm sorry. You will see that we revised the formatting of our policies. I don't really know what that means. I looked to see if I could find them, and maybe it's just my inept computer skills, but I couldn't find the formatting, the revised formatting, I guess dictates. It says our model policies now have a section on administrative responsibilities that outline the necessary steps for implementation, I guess, of the
Right.
formatting.
So a good example of that we're gonna get to is B7, where they have taken out a lot from the policy and added a new section called administrative responsibilities. So
Okay.
the formatting is cutting it here and making a new section here. I honestly, I don't like that, but
And we're seeing a lot more definition sections also, where they're defining things in its own section.
which we took definitions out a few years ago.
Pendulum swings.
Yes, it
Pendulum
does.
swings.
The thing that jumped off the page for me, and I don't know if this is the formatting change, but the words he or she are crossed out,
Uh-huh.
and the singular they is used because it still says a board member, blah, 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 blah. They, referring to a board member,
Mhm.
would represent special interests or partisans. So I don't know what's changed since 2019 and why we're using the singular they instead of he or she, which is perfectly appropriate. He or she is perfectly appropriate language.
Some people might feel that way. Others might feel they is a more inclusive term for all people.
Yeah, and the VSBA has an equity, I don't know if it's a coordinator or what, who vets this with legal as well. So,
Well, are we saying it's illegal to use the words he or she?
no, just this is the recommended.
Okay. Well, I think we should keep the he or she. It's clearer.
I disagree.
We've only got two genders anyway. So,
I also
I think as
disagree with
leaders
that.
and as people on this policy board, at least speaking for me, I'm not going to endorse the suggestion that there are more than two genders. With individuals on an individual basis, we can treat people with charity and help them overcome the impression that there's more than two genders because there just isn't.
I think that's a separate issue, first of all, and if the committee votes to send something with those edits and you disagree, you can certainly say you disagree with
Right.
that. That's
Yeah, I
fine.
think I have.
Yeah. Yeah, I
On
think that's
each of
fine.
here, they,
Yeah.
using the singular they,
Mhm.
if that's the reason it was done, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's just a more inclusive term.
I do-
Andrea?
Okay, so I just popped out to the VSBA website, and I think I know the reason why they're saying, using the word give the impression. They are stating that 16 VSA 56320 requires each school board to establish policies and procedures designed to avoid the appearance of conflict of interest. So the policy has to avoid even the appearance of it. That's probably why they use the word impression.
So that's a different impression and appearance is a little bit different. Like I abstain from all appearances of evil versus, abstain from all impressions of evil. Man, I'm like, I don't care about the they thing. I just don't care. It's an argument that's just not worth fighting for me. So, but the impression, give the impression, I get where there might be a problem with that. And I could bring up a bunch of examples of why, and it would probably make everybody in the room angry if I did that. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to give the impression of being that person.
Luke?
The bottom of the VSBA version has the footnote, and I think that's what Andrea is referring to. It's just on the next page there.
Mhm.
16 BSA 56320. Is there a reason why we don't just use that quoted language since it's the law? I mean, they've changed the legal language from the law and changed that to impression versus appearance. And I'm just wondering why we don't use the quoted legal language since that's the law.
In other words, a board member shall avoid the appearance that they would represent special interests of partisan politics for personal gain.
I think that's good. I like that more than, I mean, I don't
Kinda
know
jumped
why,
around a
it's
little bit there.
semantics.
Wouldn't it also be a problem if someone didn't give the impression, but they actually engaged in this misbehavior, but didn't give the impression? Are we saying that would be okay? I don't think we'd want to leave it like that. You'd want it to be also wrong to engage in the behavior where you
It's
didn't leave the
sounding like-
impression, right or wrong.
It's sounding, I think for the purpose of moving forward here, it's sounding like we need some clarity from the VSBA. I do agree with what Andrea just said, that that's where this language is coming from. I mean, we could simply just adopt that language from 56320.
I think it would still have to come back.
Mhm.
Next page at the bottom.
Mhm.
No,
No, the previous one, 5.3.
I'm gonna have it in the same order. Oh, you're good.
I think in any case, this has to come back to this committee. We're talking about changing.
Mhm.
I mean, gotta love the lawyers. I would agree with keeping the engage in there as well. I mean, now that I'm thinking about that. Cause, I mean, Tom's correct. I mean, we don't have to agree with what the SBA says. And that does add an additional layer. It was obviously in there for a reason originally. And I think that the comment of impression wouldn't be hard to remove that and just change to give the appearance. I think that's well within our authority as a policy committee to send it to the board that way. No?
I'm not the ultimate yay or nay. So.
Well, I mean, your comments make, they have weight, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the past years, we have been more leaning toward taking the recommendations, except in cases where in our district we do something different than what the VSBA is saying. So we've made more specifications around, well, actually in the BUUSD it's done X or Y way. Language wise, we mostly in the past 3 years have been going with their recommendations. So we could send it to the board with, these are the recommendations from the from the VSBA. Here's the concern that the policy committee had, and our recommendation is, instead of engage in or give the impression, if what we're saying is to avoid the appearance of, and then the board can discuss and vote. Or if we're not ready to do that and we instead want to ask the VSBA to tell us more about this, then we can keep it at committee until we get that answer. We already have an A1 in place as a required policy, so we're not like out of compliance or anything like that.
Yeah, it's already there.
Would you be opposed if I made a motion to send it to the board? Adding back in the engaged in or, and just modify and just change the impression to give the impression, just change that to give the appearance and just send it to the board.
Avoid you.
Didn't know we were working, and now I'm just confused, point of order about on whether we're working on a motion with seconds and votes or whether we're doing it another way. I forgot.
Yeah.
What we said a few meetings ago, which way we were going. on that,
In terms of,
on how we get to the,
yeah,
you know, the points.
I mean, Andrea's saying we make motions
Oh,
and
okay,
vote.
just
Yeah,
wondered.
yeah. John?
Not to drag this on much longer, but if you're going to change, put the engage in, I think you got to go line by line because there's some numbers where the engage in doesn't make sense to have it in there. Like number 4, a board member shall not solicit or accept anything of value in return. I think that's pretty clear and direct. I don't think you need the engage in, or I mean that's pretty clear. You know, the way that edit works, taking the engage, I think taking the engage in out versus others, you know, maybe want to leave it in. I do think, I don't know why, if the statute says the appearance of, why they did why the words impression are there now, why we didn't pick up on that before, but that makes more sense to follow the statutory language. I mean, I guess I just look at, I've helped write conflict of interest policies. I've been on all sorts of boards. We have them. They shouldn't, usually at this day and age, are pretty uniform and straightforward. So I'm not sure why. Yeah, this is pretty straightforward, except the language, why they're citing a statute and using different language that's a little more vague. Doesn't make sense to me, but.
Yeah, so what Tina is giving us when we go through these things, she's making the edits based on these recommendations by the BSPA.
Right.
So that's just what this is.
Language, the appearance looks like it's been in there for a while. Like I don't know why it wasn't picked up on, or I mean the impression of versus the appearance. I'm not sure why the impression is staying in there.
So wouldn't be, because of the way that it would read would be a board member shall not engage in or give the appearance that they would represent. So it wouldn't have to avoid the appearance.
Mm-hmm.
So we do that for 1, and then the board shall not engage in or give a board member, should not engage in or give the appearance that they have the authority to make decisions. So it's going to be the same there. Number 3, the board member shall not engage in or use their position. So that doesn't matter. I apologize. I'm going down there. So I think that's the only, okay. And number 5.
Nope, we skip 4. So
But
4 will just keep out engage in.
correct.
Okay.
And then number 5, a board member shall not engage in or give the appearance that their position on any issue can be influenced. Yeah, and then they put it down here, appearance of a conflict. That is kind of weird that they would do that. I think other than that, there's no substantive changes.
So you're saying 3 and 4 leave the edits as they are. This 3 doesn't make sense to have engage in. It's taking engage in out makes it much more direct.
I mean, even to keep engage in, it doesn't make sense because it doesn't say what you're engaging in. It doesn't say shall not engage in a conversation where you are giving the impression or whatever. It's just saying, so if we take out the or blah, 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 the second part of that sentence, it would then just say a board member shall not engage in that they would represent special interests. It doesn't even make sense. So the way, but if you just take out engage in and leave the give the appearance, then that does grammatically make sense. A board member shall not give the appearance that they would represent special interests or partisan politics. That sentence reads correctly. But if we keep in the engage in, it doesn't say anything about engage in what? A conversation, communication back and forth, written. It doesn't. So I don't think it makes sense to leave in engage in because it's not saying engage in what?
Except,
Communication.
well, it's very broad. Engage in, I don't know, representation of special interests or partisan politics for personal gain.
But if we just leave in, if we switch impression to appearance, because that's aligned with the statute, that stands on its own as a phrase. A board member shall not give the appearance of da 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 da.
Shall avoid.
Doesn't it also say is, oh, you know, it doesn't prohibit engaging in that activity.
I don't think so, because I don't
It
say,
doesn't prohibit, that's what I'm saying. Double negatives are floating around here.
yeah, I just don't, if you don't specify engage in what? You wouldn't say, I won't engage in nothing. I won't engage in what? A conversation
Well,
or,
I'm not saying it was right, but it said it before. Shall not engage in
yeah, I support,
representation of special interests or partisan politics for personal gain. I mean, that seems pretty clear to me.
Folks, is the plan for me and Tina to reach out to the VSBA to get a little bit of clarity on this language, or how do we want to move forward on this?
Michael?
So regardless of.
No, regardless.
Regardless of, thank you,
Mhm.
of what VSBA says, I think impression should be changed to appearance. So.
I can agree with that.
So we're good on that.
Is everybody fine with that?
In the first line.
And all of them.
Yes.
Okay. So the only question that would go to VSBA would be, because at that point, there's
If
no,
that's the case, then we don't need to.
Yeah. Okay, so we got rid of VSBA on that. So the question for us is whether or not we want to have engage in there, right? If I'm understanding the conversation, which is very
Yeah.
possible that I don't.
And I think that depends on the sentence. Yeah, because I agree with John. Some of the sentences it makes sense and some it's just not appropriate. It's almost like they just cut and pasted like that beginning for all of them.
So, don't mean to like monopolize this.
Go ahead.
Can we just take one at a time and just move forward on this? Each number one at a time and just see how it sugars out for us. So the board member shall not, and the question is whether or not we want to put engage in or give the impression, not impression.
Appearance.
Because I'm okay with the way that reads with the engage in there and just changing the appearance.
I don't think grammatically it makes sense.
I failed English.
We are not saying, it doesn't say a board member should not engage in communication around or a discussion about. It just says shall not engage in. That is not a complete
So
phrase.
it wasn't a complete phrase before, right?
So right, so I'm sort of saying, so if we're editing, let's take out the things that don't make sense. And they have recommended that comes out. So I agree with that. I think changing impression to appearance makes fine sense, and I could totally say, yeah, let's do all that, but I don't understand why we would keep in the engage in when as a phrase it is not a complete phrase.
So the board member shall not give the appearance
That they would represent.
I'm okay with that. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, because if you say appearance, the fact is that if you're actually engaging in it, if somebody finds out about it, you gave the appearance, so therefore you're doing it.
So
Not up front.
it could also be two sentences. Because a board member shall not engage in representing special interests or partisan politics. Or
Nor shall they.
Nor shall they give the appearance that they would do that. So I think you could have two sentences and then it would be grammatically correct to say that you're not engage in representing special interests or partisan politics, period. Next sentence, a board member shall not give the appearance that they would represent. And then grammatically you're okay, you're still covering both sides. It just makes it two sentences instead of one.
I do agree with Michael, however, that giving the appearance is, if you've engaged in it, you have given the appearance. So I don't think we need both, personally.
If I could, not if it's a secret and nobody knows. You haven't given, there has to be somebody on the other side of giving the appearance.
All right, I
What
don't
you
know
do
if we
in
could
private
just
is
make a
not-
motion to
it's not
table
different
this for
than-
tonight because it's 6:50 and we have a bunch more to
There's
go
four more to go
through.
through, 4 more to go through.
So I
And
don't
they should be
know.
pretty straightforward.
I thought that one was
Yeah.
straightforward too, but it is not. I really don't.
Can we have it rewritten to, I think you understand what we want. Can we have it rewritten to show with the engage and without? And then we can make that decision in October?
Sure.
Is that,
Okay.
I don't want to burden the staff for that. I just. For brevity, I was just thinking that would be, you know?
I can try to work something up and send it to Tina and we can see how it
Yeah,
goes.
yeah, we can work on that.
And lest the record not be clear, I know Michael said it wasn't important, but I still think he or she should stay. And we don't use the singular they. I just want to be
I
clear for the record.
understand that's your
Okay.
perspective.
Thank
Yes, thank you. Okay, moving on to 5.4 on the agenda, which is B2. Also a required policy that we already have in place with the BUUSD policy with the edits and strike throughs and the VSBA version in your packet as well.
Motion to approve and move to the board. Send to the board.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes,
Okay.
it also says referring to a post-secondary student, it refers to
Can you say which
they. I'm
section
sorry,
you're
yes,
talking about?
two. The change there in paragraph 2 of definitions. And it says, again, just like the last one, a post-secondary student referring to a person, and then it changes the he or she to they.
Yes,
So I have the same concern.
okay. Any other discussion?
Are we sending this? We are sending the modified version.
We would
was
send
my
this
motion.
to the board,
Okay.
yes. So
Yes.
this is ours with the edits. Michael's motion is to send it as presented in the packet. You seconded the
Yep.
motion. Tom has a concern about the, using they. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion on the table, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. John, are you voting? You might be on mute.
Oh, I said aye, sorry. Can you hear me?
Thank you. And, yeah, I hear you now. Thank you. And opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we will send this to the board. Next is, next is 5.5B4, drug and alcohol testing of transportation employees. And what it says on the policy notes about this one is formatting changes, including the addition of a definition section, and added a requirement that the policy be filed in the principal's office per 16 VSA 1222. So you see our current B4 and the VSBA B4 in your packet.
Yeah, okay, so,
So it looks like the changes are replacing will with shall and
Yeah.
just taking out his or her and just leaving in designee. So
no, I know, I
superintendent
don't,
or
I'm just trying
designee.
I'm trying to figure out whether or not I want to ask the question about state statute and get into that matter of detail, and I'm not going to, so I'm just gonna make a motion to approve the changes as presented and send it to the board.
Second.
I'll second that, or no.
Okay. I don't know. Did I read the wrong policy note? I think I may have.
B4?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I did. I read the one for C3, so that was incorrect. So the B4 notes are just formatting changes. So it's just those two things. Yes. Okay. So we have a first by Michael, a second by Tom. Any discussion?
Yes, I just
Okay.
want to be sure it's understood for the record I'm being
Yeah.
consistent.
Yes.
It does say he, she, but it doesn't have the same problem because it just says or designee.
Correct.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, great.
And the reason why I was hesitant was only because I think there's statute that covers this, and I think deal with that later.
Okay. Any other discussion before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Moving on to 5.6 which is B7, tobacco prohibition. Okay, there was a little bit more in the policy notes about this. So it says the title of the policy was revised because the policy applies to students, staff, and visitors. The policy was also revised to clarify that a school district's procedures for this policy may include confiscation and appropriate referrals to law enforcement authorities. And also, school districts are not required to do so under 16 VSA 140. So we have what's in the packet, which we just adopted this June 28th of this year, and then the VSBA version. Tom?
Just out of curiosity, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
First one is, what was the title that we've changed? I don't see it there. Maybe I just missed
Yeah,
it.
good question. Do you know, Luke?
No, it was longer.
I will
You
look
talked
it
about
up.
who was
I think it
applicable
was
to?
tobacco prohibition and, or something like that. It was longer than tobacco
I will
prohibition.
tell you, right? Well, our website only says tobacco prohibition. Maybe we have adopted it so recently that
With
we
the new
already
title.
have the right title,
Right.
because on our
Yeah,
website it
because this is
says
just a few months
tobacco
ago.
prohibition. Yeah,
The other
go
question?
ahead. Yep.
I think that's fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with that title. I'm just curious
Yeah,
what
yeah,
was it
fair
before?
question.
This might be for Luke, but these definitions, I took a look at them in the statute. It refers to the definition in Title 7, and then Title 7 refers again to definitions in Title 32 for tobacco product, tobacco paraphernalia, and tobacco substitutes. My first question is, practically, is this causing any concerns? Because of course, the same mode of use of tobacco, I assume it's also prohibited to have a smoking device that the owner of the device would say, oh, this isn't for tobacco. This is for other substances. I'm just curious.
So there is a
That's another
drug and
policy.
alcohol policy that frankly needs to be beefed up. But
This is
it's not in
separate.
conflict with this, but this is separate.
By
than the
beefed
drug
up,
and alcohol.
it's missing
Yeah.
some stuff.
Uh-huh.
That is not what this is.
Right. I mean, for example, tobacco paraphernalia is any device intended or designed for use in smoking, inhaling, ingesting, or otherwise introducing tobacco products. I mean, the same device, one could claim, well, this isn't for tobacco. This is for something else.
All right, that's a different violation.
Different
More
policy,
severe
different policy violation.
Okay, all right.
You're like,
Yeah.
you want it to be tobacco,
Yeah.
not the other
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
It's less
Oh,
severe if
okay.
it's tobacco.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
Right.
And then,
So it's
tobacco
covered someplace else, yeah.
Yeah, and tobacco products, and tobacco substitute are defined by the statute, but okay, if there hasn't been a,
Correct. And
Any-
tobacco substitute is also helpful because the vape products are considered tobacco substitutes. So
Mhm.
vaping, even though it's not tobacco, it still has nicotine and all the other nasty chemicals in it that this still covers that. And I think they say as amended from time to time because there's new products being introduced to the market that
Pretty constantly.
yeah,
Mhm.
right.
Anything
okay,
else?
that was my question. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions or?
And I apologize, like totally off. Are tobacco patches okay?
Oh, nicotine patches, you mean?
Yeah.
Only under a doctor's
Yeah.
prescription and
Okay.
applied. You can't have them with you.
Mm,
It has to be on. And you have to have those.
Has that ever happened? Just out of curiosity?
Used to,
Oh, wow.
used to a
No,
lot.
it's still,
A child with a patch?
yeah,
Could
because they
be,
put 10 of them on.
yeah.
But I don't think it's much anymore.
No, nicotine gum is also an issue. There's,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of
Okay.
different substances we have to be aware of.
As amended from time to time.
Other questions or concerns?
Did I make a motion?
Not yet.
I make a motion to approve as presented and send it to the board.
Okay, and anyone want to second that? Tom, okay, great. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that's unanimous. So we'll send this to the board for first read. Okay, thank you. Okay, 5.7 is C3. And this was what I read erroneously before. So there's formatting changes, including the addition of a definition section and added requirement that the policy be filed in the principal's office per 16 VSA 1222. I did see one typo under administrative responsibilities, just the word the, just need THE. And I'll open for discussion or motions. And we have our version and then the VSBA version in the packet.
Motion to approve as presented with the modification and send to the board.
Okay,
I believe, we're missing in number 4 as well.
number 4.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Submit. It just says submit. though. It starts with
says, and
submit,
shall
right?
include total number of, it should say, shall include the total number of.
And shall include
Submit. Why is it?
the total number of pupils transported by the school district. Okay,
I mean, I could live without the you could
Yeah.
do it, but if you want the Mr. Ather, let's go with it.
while we're adding the.
I
Tom?
mean, the wordsmithing continues, I guess, but it starts with added at the beginning there under administrative responsibilities. The superintendent or designee shall, right? At the
Sorry,
beginning,
at the very top?
underlined. No, underneath here.
You're right.
It refers to the superintendent or designee shall,
Yes,
and then it should be followed by, I guess, a verb or whatever that next word is.
Yeah.
File,
File,
establish,
yeah.
I guess it says may consider
So number
or
3,
submit. All of the superintendent shouldn't be anywhere,
yeah,
correct?
agree. So on number 3, we should strike out the superintendent.
Well, I don't think you can say shall may. I mean, it's may is
Superintendent or
discretionary,
designee
shall is
shall.
you will do it. So that's a bit of a conflict.
Well, could we say shall consider, because consider is
Yes.
not a for sure, it's
Correct.
you have to consider it.
Mhm.
So if we struck out the superintendent may under number 3 and instead just had consider.
Okay. Shall submit. Shall include.
These are, by the way, all friendly amendments. I'm taking them as friendly.
Mhm.
How about, yeah, how about in 4? Again, I don't think it raises the same concern I had about he or she, the way this is worded. So that's not what I'm saying, but in 4, paragraph 4,
Mhm.
it says shall include, shouldn't it have the article A, total number of pupils?
That's what
instead
Luke
of
was just
class- Oh, it's
saying.
already been said?
Yeah, Luke was
I'm sorry.
saying shall include the total number of pupils, so
Oh,
we could
the,
add in
okay.
the, and that would maybe be a little
Right.
bit more
Okay.
grammatically. Okay, so the edits that we have are the typo of the in number 1, the striking out in number 3 of the superintendent may, and then in number 4, adding the word the before total number of pupils. That's fine for
All
your
accepted for
amendment.
friendly amendment.
Okay, and Tom, that's fine for your second? Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of sending this to the board for a first reading with these amendments?
All right.
Aye.
Aye. John, did you say yes?
Oh, yes, I did. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Sorry, I'm a
we
little under the
will-
weather, so I'm trying to not cough in
Okay.
everybody's ear.
That's all right. All right, so that finishes our new business. Our old business is item 6.1, policy audit follow-up. And in your packet, you have an email that was sent to Chris and I from Kara Zimmerman at the VSBA. Chris and I had a phone call with Kara to find out more about the policy audit option that the VSBA offers. And Chris, I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about our conversation with her.
Yeah, I think I thought it was a very, very instructive conversation. I think that really what came from this is it didn't sound to me, Chris, like she was recommending we go forward with this. That in fact, and it says in the letter that there might be a better approach. That in fact, we could pay the $1,500. She could look through everything, but her first impression of this is that we're in very good shape. But instead, it says here, consider board training on roles and responsibilities, good governance. So I think that's a great idea. I mean, she could come and speak to the whole group together if we wanted to, but I think I got the impression, Chris, that she did not think this would be the best use of this committee's or the board's time.
Yeah.
Given where we're at.
What I heard her say for sure was she couldn't say one way or the other whether we were 100%, everything was exactly as it should be, because of course she said, I haven't reviewed all of your things. That's what the audit would be. But when we talked about our structure of the policy committee, we talked about our BUUSD policy index and how we keep track of the changes that are coming down from the VSBA and how we sort of like cross-reference between those weekly updates and the spreadsheet that we have. She definitely said those are great ways to keep track of it. Said that seemed very organized and efficient and all of that. She said she would 100% be happy to still do the policy audit if we wanted to, and you can see that it can be broken down into 2 sections for $750 each. First phase would be review of required model policies, and second phase would be review of recommended policies. So you can do just one for $750 or $1,500 for both. And she said, sounds like your policy committee is doing some of this work. That's the reluctance to spend the money. What I liked about the possible recommendation about the board training on roles and responsibilities was the piece that says that Debbie, their director of board services, could share more with us about how we might benefit from a refresher on the role of policy and the process for policy development, and the role of the school board and the role of the superintendent. That was interesting to us to hear about.
Yeah, it
and
was.
Maybe something we would present to the whole board to tell them, hey, this is available.
I would certainly recommend we bring it forward to the whole board just for them to consider. I think you also have to understand, I don't want to say most districts, but many boards don't even have policy committees. So the fact that we have this, as she pointed out in the letter, we're doing a lot of the work that the VSBA would be doing.
Yeah.
So.
Any questions from people about that conversation or about this email, Michael?
Just make a comment that
Yeah, sure.
I think we have a policy committee.
Good thing.
See, there you go. But no, I have nothing else.
Okay. John?
Yeah, yeah, I stand by what I said before. I don't think the $1,500 for the actual review of the policies makes any sense. Doing the training, I think that's for the board, not really for our committee to talk about. But I just looking at when I got the packet and I looked at the agenda, looked at the parking lot items. You can see all the changes that they did in August of 23. Seems we're right on it, and I don't see where the audit could. Seems like whenever there's a change, we're pretty prompt on it. And so it sounded like good feedback, which was good, which we're hoping for. I would nullify the impression that we talked about before. Some people thought we were doing what we're supposed to be doing, and I don't think that's true. So yeah, so I just don't think I'm not in position to weigh in about the training for the board on these roles. I think that's really for the school board to decide.
Mhm. Thank you. Yeah, Tom?
I agree with John on that. So essentially, no need for the paid audit, and it's up to the board itself whether it wants to engage in training that's offered.
Okay, great. Emily, any?
Yeah, I think that sounds like we're doing good work. And I, for one, would be very interested in learning more about the process for policy development.
Okay, so maybe either at roundtable, or I could bring this up at the next meeting at roundtable, or if we want to put it on an agenda.
Well, you had
could
the
do that.
opportunity to review the policy.
Yeah, the
committee.
policy packet, right, or when we talk about policy committee reports, correct. Okay, yeah, I can bring that to the board for sure. Andrea?
So generally you would have the committee make the recommendation to the board that, you know, that the policy committee is recommending that we forego an audit and, you know, discuss pursuing such and such, because it's generally the recommendation of the committee that gets presented to the board.
I make a motion to recommend to the board not to do the audit and for the board to consider the other options that were listed out.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to second that
No.
motion?
No,
No,
I
you don't? Okay,
No,
okay.
I don't know if it's a point of discussion now or,
Oh, we need
Or
a
do
second
I
for
wait?
discussion.
because I don't.
First,
think-
let's see if anybody
Okay,
wants to second the
okay.
motion.
My second.
Okay, Emily, second. Tom?
For me, it's none of my business whether they want to have a training or not. And I'm not endorsing it.
Okay,
So I wouldn't vote for that.
okay.
Remember, it's just recommending them
We
to
can-
consider.
Consider,
Yeah.
yeah. And only because Andrew, well, we were heading down that road anyway,
Uh-huh.
but I'm just making the motion to, I don't even think we have to make a motion. I think but since Andrea was just trying to make it easy, but apparently.
All right, well, we have a motion and a second, so we can vote. Tom cannot vote for it, and that's fine. It can go forward or not. John?
Well, maybe we're splitting hairs tonight, but this is the policy committee. This is not a policy. I guess it's not I look at it as just really not I agree with Tom. Not that I opposed to it necessarily, but it's just it's not for me to say to do this, and it just could give the wrong impression. I thought that this committee, the charge of this committee is to recommend policies. This is not a policy, so that's why I thought it was outside. Really, as a lay member of the board of this committee, it's not my role to tell the school board what they should even consider as far as training.
I withdraw my motion. I'm just gonna withdraw my motion. Chris, you can do
All
what
right.
you want during the
Okay,
around the thing.
fine. We
I
have
think-
no motion.
I think it would be probably wrong for me to disregard two attorneys.
Okay, great.
Would be the first time,
Yeah, I
I'm
was gonna
sure.
say.
but-
Yeah.
All right, so we are going to move on to number 7, items for future agenda. So as John pointed out, this list that we have in the parking lot, these are the things that have come up as possibly needing revisions. So what I did, like I said, for this month was just pick some of them. So we could do the same. I have not been made aware of any new required policies that we don't have in place that we need to get to ASAP. So we would just be adding some of these and working through them to see if we want to go with the revisions from the VSBA. I wonder if anyone has, if we should just start from the top, or anyone has any recommendations for things they'd like to take.
I'm okay with you picking out 5 and moving forward.
Oh, A through E.
We could do that. Is that
That sounds
fine
good.
with
No
folks?
Yeah.
preferences.
Well, what about going back to our last meeting, which is the last 2 meetings, we talked about the I see there's driver education policy. Luke, I
Mhm.
thought that was something that was a discussion issue that needed to be brought up.
Yes, so we have procedures in place to address the concerns that I brought forward earlier. And I don't know that we have strong, advice from the AOE or council or anyone on how to address that within policy.
We don't.
So our procedures, I'm feeling very comfortable with. Policy, I don't know that we have enough guidance to pick that one up and do anything substantial with it.
No, I just knew that was an issue, but if it's been addressed through procedures, that's fine to me.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, though.
Okay, so we could take A through E out of the parking lot for next month.
Sure.
And then one question I had, and I don't know, Chris or Luke, if you know the answer to this. Do you remember a couple of months ago it came up that VISBIT was going to be recommending model procedures for a policy that we discussed? And we said, that's strange. Why would VISBIT be recommending model procedures? Does that ring a bell for anybody?
Ringing a bell.
So there is a VISBIT model procedure website that has procedures for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 policies. Is that something that we don't create procedures here, but is that something to how to approach that?
I think
of
our
like matching
admin team would look at these
that you guys would
Yeah.
maybe look at them to match them up to the policies that we have.
if,
So
if
there are-
appropriate.
Right, there are very
Yeah.
few, like, hazing, harassing, bullying.
Yes,
The model procedures
right.
are required to be adopted as written.
Yes,
So
okay.
like that might be one example that's on there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure of any other
Okay.
that are, maybe the Title IX procedures have to be adopted as written,
Yeah,
but the others I think are kind of recommendations, and I'd want to take a hard look at those.
Yeah.
I disagree with some of the policies, so
uh-huh.
I don't want to tell them how to do it.
Right,
Like,
right, okay. I'll send you the website, because I think it was maybe in one of the VSBA updates that it was
they
highlighted
were
and I
gonna be
saw
working
it,
on
yeah.
Yeah.
And then now the website is here with these model procedures, so maybe I'll just send you an email
That'd
with
be
that
great.
to look at,
Thank you.
okay, cool, yeah.
Maybe I don't need to know this right now, but what's VISBIT?
Oh, what does it stand for?
Remote School Board Insurance Trust.
Thank
Oh.
you.
So that's in our acronyms, Luke. It would have been embarrassing if one of us screwed that up.
At 7:30 at
I
night.
know.
And if anything else comes up for an item for a future agenda, obviously anyone can send those to me. Or if any new policies pop up that we need to get on right away, we would add that as well. Yeah,
Can
Michael?
I ask what the tolerance level for this committee would be for a policy regarding cell phones? So let me preface that comment. Whatever. I think Essex just changed how they do cell phones in their schools.
Hmm.
And based on the one line that I read, it was, they put them in lock boxes. And I assume that teachers have problems with cell phones. Was that correct? And I shouldn't assume, but
Some.
Some.
so is
Some have
that
problems or
something?
some problems?
Some have problems.
Some have some
Really
problems
don't, yeah.
and some don't.
I see.
And I think it also depends on the grade and age, and there's,
It is
kindergartners who live in
enforceability,
there versus
enforceability
like an
issues.
18-year-old senior is
The
very
question
different.
of whether this should be more of a procedural disciplinary matter as opposed to a direct policy. I don't know, because you'd want to get that vetted about, enforceability is always my worry in these things. But I get where you're coming from. Michael is right. This is being explored, in a few districts in Vermont. But I think a lot of districts, a lot of schools already have tight enforceable procedures in place. Or relatively enforceable.
So the question that I have is, what's the tolerance level of the committee to take that on as a possibility? Because if the committee is like, I don't want to deal with that, then there's no point of me even looking into it. But if the committee is like, you know what? I kind of would like to hear something about that.
It's worth
Maybe
a
we have
discussion.
some sort of conversation with teachers that come in and say, hey, listen, this is a problem. And then if the committee wants to do it, then we send it to the board and hope that they take their advice. If
Mhm.
we come to something.
And maybe, I don't know if it's just Essex, but if they've developed a policy, it wouldn't hurt instead of reinventing the wheel.
Mhm,
Oh,
Maybe
absolutely.
there's another school that has a different approach. I don't know.
Mhm, mhm.
Just throw that out.
I would say, if we thought 5.3 was gonna be an easy one, and it clearly wasn't, policy around cell phones, that's gonna be a Pandora's box. I just want to
There's
put
no
that
doubt
on
about
the
it.
table, that
Mhm.
if we go there, it's gonna be a lot of,
It would
there's a
be
lot of.
interesting to see the research and kind of recon that Essex and other districts have done on this.
No promises, from my perspective. I'm just saying, and certainly not anything that would be for like October. I mean, it just,
Yeah.
you know,
It is a topic for sure.
Mhm. I would be open to definitely seeing what other schools have.
Okay.
To see if we would want to tackle it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I-
John, would you be open to finding out more about what other schools are doing about that?
Yeah, I'd be very interested since I have a seventh grader and eighth grader. My seventh grader thinks I'm terrible because he doesn't have a phone yet. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it'd be. It's. I think it's something at least to look at.
So maybe we could add it to the parking lot.
yes.
So let's add a parking lot item that we would call cell phone policy research.
Sure.
Fine.
I'm okay with
Fine.
it. I think it gets the point out there that, we're looking into it, I think, and I'm not gonna,
And maybe we would put it on for November or something like that.
I mean, you could,
Perhaps.
would check with me before you.
Yeah,
do the
obviously we'll have the
agenda.
October meeting
Yeah,
before I
that's
would.
true.
We could-
Which reminds me, in the board packet that just came out.
Yep.
Lisa and I have a proposal for November, December, January meetings because of the vacations. I know when that proposal, at least one policy meeting is canceled.
Okay. So what we know right now is the next meeting date is October 18th of this committee. John?
I just in that vein, I noticed reviewing the parking lot items. There's we said A through F, I believe, but I noticed there's like F is recommended, but then there's one or two others like I is required and J is required. I didn't know if it would make sense to do the one that's the VSBA revised ones that are required first, and then hit the recommended ones. If that makes any sense. I didn't pick up on that. Then I was just kind of looking. There's some of these are required, some are recommended, and if we're putting off some of these required changes, is that going to be a problem for us? I don't know.
So we said A through E, which are all required.
Yep.
Sorry. I thought you said F. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no problem. The only problem is if there's a required policy that we don't have in place. So like if I look at like D1, I'm pretty sure we already have a D1 in
We do.
place. Yeah, we do, proficiency-based learning. So the only issue is if it's a required policy that we don't have, but we can continue to take them for the revisions.
Well, I didn't know just because they made these changes because of the July 1 was the date when a lot of the laws changed. I wasn't sure if there's some law changes that we had. That's why they're
Right.
recommending them.
Yeah. Andrea?
Yeah, it just John took the words out of my mouth. Just because we have a policy in place that's required doesn't mean it's aligned with statute. So they could have changed it because it's not aligned with statute. So those probably should be the priority.
Right. So the one that we took in May or June that had been highlighted for us, this must be in place, or maybe it was for August 1, has to be in place. So they have been highlighting if there are changes that are aligned with statute, like you have a deadline on this, you need to do it
And we
ASAP,
jumped on them.
and we got them right away. So that has not been the case for any of these that have been highlighted to say you have a deadline to make any of these changes.
That's right. Yeah. I just saw the July. I was just thinking July 1, but if they're highlighting that for us, then it's no issue.
Right.
So it's a long way of saying A through E still works.
I think A
Okay.
through E
Yeah.
still works. Yeah, yep. All right, and then at the board meeting, next week, we'll be looking at this proposed, schedule of meetings for the end of the year.
It's in
and
your
The packet
packet.
that just came out, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, we will have more information on that for this
I'm
meeting in
almost
October.
positive the October 18 policy meeting is still okay.
Great. All right, look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night,
All
all.
right, we are adjourned. Thank
Thank you.
you.